Yes, friends, we continue our work from where we left off. In our work, we had last applied the necessary textures for this river and terrain. You also need to apply these textures and conduct tests and trials. The more tests and trials you conduct, the better the scene's saturation time will fit, and it will look more pleasing to your eyes, dear friends. It will produce such a nice quality. Now, as you know, there are some objects on the left side. We will see how to use these objects. While using them, there is actually single placement and multiple placement. Right now, we will see single placement. In the next section, we will see multiple placement. Friends, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, for a scene to be of high quality, or a lot of testing, a lot of trials, and a lot of time need to be dedicated. Take a break when you get bored, leave it, and then continue from where you left off. Because when a person maintains continuity in something, there are some moments of boredom and some overlooked objects in that continuity. You need to come back to the work later to see these things. Therefore, when you're working on this and you reach a point where you are very bored, or the work has reached a certain level of saturation, take a break. When you return, continue the work from where you left off, friends. These are important and experienced matters. Now, when I come to the trees section here, look, we have different trees here. We can use these, friends. Of course, you can use any trees you want regarding nature. There is quite a variety of plants here, and there are some newly added trees in Twinmotion. They are indicated with a downward arrow. Look, if you see the downward arrow key or while downloading a model in Twinmotion, to know that this tree has not been downloaded. In other words, it is not in your library. Look, I'm pressing the button. I'm downloading it from here. I've downloaded it. I also pressed the card button here so that if I like the tree, I can call it back from favorites. Look, I brought the tree into my scene, friends. I did a drag and drop very simply, the drag console. Object is one of the most important objects in Twinmotion. Look, our tree has arrived. Now, friends, I can make some adjustments to the tree. When you prepare the tree trunk in this way, just like with every object, there is an adjustment related to its age on the right side. Look, it says age. When I increase this, as the tree grows, the form of the tree changes accordingly, as you can see. The shadow you see here provides a nice ambience. When you cast that shadow onto buildings or different objects, you get a really nice visual. Let's also reduce it and see what kind of image it will give. Look, but if I use it small, it looks like this. And if I use it large, it results in this way. Look, when I take this object and hold it at the midpoint here and bring it over here, friends, you see it casts a nice shadow on my building. If you want, you can place it here or there. Let's do it like this. Let's create an impression here as if there used to be a tree here that has grown. You can also rotate it like this from here. This will provide a nice ambiance here. If the sun is going to come from the right, it doesn't really matter where it's coming from, since we will be covering this area. The areas we will cover will be filled with many objects, and these objects will add a nice touch to our work, friends. Of course, I will also show how to render in the final part. Our current scene is our real-time scene, meaning our exploration scene, or we are exploring here with a CD, friends. But in the final render part, we will encounter a different situation. By different situation, I mean we will encounter a very high quality situation. There will be a different quality element than this image. That is the button over there, Padres. Look, this is the render button. But of course, there are many things we will see before we get to this render button. For example, if you want, I can press the render button just to satisfy your curiosity. When I press the render button, look, there is a rendering situation like this. Do you see? A better calculation has occurred than the screen. We have seen, friends. What happened? Look, the shadows. The tree, the shadow falling on the tree, meaning the shadow of the tree falling here, gave us a more beautiful, higher quality image. When I press this quotation mark and then press the lower quotation mark, there are low, medium, and high values. These also have extra settings, friends. We will see those as well. Here, of course, since I took the low, medium, and high setting and went from the midpoint, it gave me such an image on average, friends. But of course, in the later parts, we will get a better evaluation. To exit again with this Lean's Rattan view, friends, it's enough to press here. So when you press here, you will exit again. So even the image here is quite a nice image. This image allows us to do many of our tasks, friends. Now, what did I say at the very beginning? We will see how to place them one by one. So from here, for example, we can see how to place any plant, any tree and grass here. Look, I'm clicking again. I pressed here so that I don't have to search again. Classy friends, let this come down. Some trees can be placed late, in terms of polygon and quality, late combat geometry. Look, I took this too and placed it here, friends. Now, of course, I'm showing you this slowly. Well, of course, there is a faster part to this. Look, it looks like a lemon tree here. Well, what's its name? AKA council pack. Let's do it like this. Let's move it here. Look, when you do it this way, it comes with a situation like this. As you can see, friends, let these stay for now. I'm just showing it as an example. We will do these later. Look, there's a palm. I mean, the trees we call palm trees. By downloading these, we will create a nice view. Look, there's a pine tree here. So a pine tree can be used for this area, friends. A little more, as if this place is a forest. Here, by giving the appearance of trees that were planted later, we can create a more realistic view. Look, there are various styles of pine trees here. A slightly more wild, natural pine tree. This is more applicable for the other side. When we divide our plan and project into two, let the left side be an area covered with forests, and let's make the right side an area that was planted later. Friends, that's why, for example, when you download the pine trees, let me press the heart button here again. Induce these like this, friends. Let's bring all of them onto the stage and see the effect on the stage. The effect on the stage can be different for each tree. That's why I bring them onto the stage. And see the effect on the pine trees and on the tree, friends. Because when you bring it onto the stage, well, there can be a bit of a difference between what is visible here and what is visible there. That's why it's beneficial to bring it onto the stage and take a look. Look, for example, it looks very large. Look, there's a difference between its stance like this, and its stance like that. In short, it's important to bring the model onto the stage, friends. It's very important to bring it down and take a look. Let's see. I think we had brought this down. Let's call this onto the stage, and let's call that as well. Yes, here is an object of ours. As you can see, this is a somewhat gigantic tree, friends. Therefore, I won't add much of this here. We can add a slightly reduced version of this, but it could also be like this. And we have our last tree. It's this one. I think this is the same. Yes, this is the same. Here's this, friends. Yes, this is a slightly different tree. The leaves look different, as you can see. I like this tree. Friends, this tree seems a bit more native to our region. I mean, it resembles the geography of Turkey. Now, here's the situation. Here's the situation. I mean, while placing the trees here, friends, it's a bit difficult to place them manually one by one. Our purpose here should be a bit different. I mean, I took these, I'm loading them here one by one. Look, I've added these now, but there's also a faster way to do this. Or, for example, there should be rocks and stones around here. So what happens at the point where soil and water meet to disrupt the natural look here? As we see in our reference image, there could be objects like light rocks or gravel stones. For example, I immediately go to the plant menu and come to the rock section. Here, for instance, I'm adding a rock, friends. I'm adding various different ones like this. Of course, adding them like this is nice and looks natural, but to make this work more effective and faster, if not, we can use a canyon type rock. When we place it like this, Twinmotion already has a nice feature. When you place them, it adjusts according to the face surface of the terrain. Of course, when you place these, it's always your practice method. If these appear too large, use scaling to resize them and place them at a certain proportion. Friends, look, there's a difference between its bare state, that is its normal state, and its current state. Did you see how different it looks? That's why this placement and giving it a natural movement is really important. By doing it this way, we decorate this area with various different objects. Friends, if you want, let there be a narrowing part of a river here. So when we take a render from here, let's do it like this. When we take a render from here, if you cover this area with rock pieces, it will look nicer. Yes, we can fill this part. This part. This part, it looks as if water is flowing down a bit more here. There could be a slight waterfall effect. You might have seen in games very beautiful visuals, and ambiances are created. Imagine as if the rock ends here and continues in this way. From here, the water now flows down between the rocks. In fact, we can do something like this here, friends. For example, we can bring these like this. By bringing and enlarging many of these, you can make it look as if there is a rock formation and some kind of structure in the background. Look, since it automatically captures some rocks, let's do it like this. Let's do it like this. Creating a scene is a bit of a laborious and demanding task, but it's an enjoyable one, friends. You know, when creating the scene, it's necessary to make the objects in the scene match each other. I duplicated one more of this. Let it be a copy. I will do it like this in this one as well. Since we will see the rock from here, there could be an arrangement like this, friends. We can place more rocks here as a continuation of this. It depends on where you are showing it from. If you want to show it in different ways, this part also needs to be covered. For example, let's do it like this. Let's say you did it like this, for instance. One of these is asynchronous. Yes, you can also add trees behind them if you want. Let it be a process like this, or you can cover it by adding trees to these bases. Or if you want the base parts to look more realistic by adding grass or rocks, the more you work on the scene, the more detail you add, friends, the better it will look. Look, as it is in this way, we will also place stones and rocks in these parts. Of course, in our next lesson, we will make this a bit more practical and faster, friends. In this lesson, we learned how to add manually, by hand. See you in our next section. Goodbye.